All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day two of the This Time Daily podcast. I'm going to be doing it solo again tonight, as most of these podcasts that take place in this evening hour here in the state of Florida, pretty much this is going to be just me for the most part, as the rest of the family does go to bed promptly at 9 p.m., give or take a minute or two. And as you can tell from the title, if you were here for day one was a hot fiasco of a mess. I was actually unaware that the camera was on. The camera was actually supposed to be off for that day one. So I had to basically make day one go away. So for those of you who did tune in for day one, thank you for that. Thank you for tuning into that mess that was there for about 45 minutes that I was live. Day two is going to be pretty much the same. I'm probably going to save some of the future conversations for closer to the days. Like I said, there was actually some wrestling conversations that I want to kind of go into, but I think we're going to save that as WrestleMania season is coming very quickly. I believe about 2 weeks away. I believe it's on the 18th and 19th this year. If you are wrestling fans, you already know. And there's quite a few things that has happened in wrestling, even just as soon as last night, as I was unaware of some things that I would love to talk to wrestling fans in the future. So stay tuned for that as well. Now, here's what we're going to talk about today, though. I felt as if this was very appropriate in a sense, uh, based off of what we were going through just earlier today. Me and my wife had a lovely day of resort hopping. We did some pin training at some of the resorts, and we ran into some. I guess you could say we ran into two different versions of the cast members that we kind of feel is you're seeing one version of cast members more than others over the last few years, and that does kind of bring it to a sour point because me and my wife were very adamant about being Disney cast members. I wanted to be a cast member at a very young age, and it became a necessity after I realized how important that the Walt Disney World Company, or just in general, Florida and theme parks were to my dad, that I've definitely talked about in the past before. And the reason I say how adamant we are about being cast members is because I grew up at a time coming to the Disney theme parks ever since I was a little kid. Cast members, as the cliche goes, cast members were the magic. They were the biggest part of your memorable vacation, besides the rides, besides seeing Mickey and all the other characters. Sometimes it was the cast members that made the experience just as enjoyable as Disney's intellectual properties per se. But when me and my wife, we both started our journey in the Walt Disney World Company back in 2013, and I would say that was kind of the teetering point of Disney cast members, just in general. Where I worked with enough people that still enjoy the job that would tell you about the good time, the good old days back in the 80s, back in the 90s when Walt Disney World, the company itself here in Florida, was still young. To the point where now we're working with a lot of people who it turned into this there's renaissance, I guess you could say, of where cast members are really just there to get a paycheck. Uh, Cast members are really just there to put it on the resume that they're a cast member. And I kind of feel as if that takes away from the Disney experience at the end of the day as well. So, one of the things that we noticed today is, of course, right off the bat when we were, it was kind of a give or take with how we were seeing cast members in the park, and or I should say in the resort area or Skyliners, things like that. And it always starts at the toll booth. Every once in a while, we'll notice when you pay for your parking or you're showing your annual pass. Every once in a while, you'll notice that cast member, the different tone that the cast member has. I understand everybody has a bad day, but as bad as the day as it is, you're working at Disney. Start with the magic there. You're the first thing that people are seeing. And we've had a couple times where the cast member, it's almost as if the cast members don't even like other cast members. So at a time, we worked both when we were cast members, or one of us was cast members. We would show our Walt Disney ID. Sometimes you'd get that cast member that's like, they love it. They love the fact that we work together without even working together. But then some cast members, it's almost as if they don't like you because you're a cast member. And we see a lot of that more often now, especially since the pandemic. I think the pandemic um, I think the pandemic was a big part of it. It really brought in a lot of people that, again, they looked at Disney as an opportunity to get free tickets. They looked at an opportunity as just to put it on the resume. Now I feel as if the Walt Disney World Company and theme parks in general are turning into like this revolving door of people who, it's like, again, it's not about the experience. It's not about wanting to have longevity in the workplace. It's more like I want to put this on my resume so that my next job can see that I had worked at Disney. That literally pretty much means you have great customer service. However they want to slice it and dice it. So to add on to that though, so as I said, there were a couple times we ran into some cast members. You could tell they just don't really care about their job. It's whatever. But today was a big difference, and that big difference was, of course, we did some pin training. We started off our day pin training. We went straight to Pop Century Art of Animation as far as the resorts go, and again, it was again night and day. One cast member very helpful with where the pin board was located. Another cast member, it seemed as if they didn't want to deal with the pin boards, which we do see that a lot of when it comes to pin training. Some people don't want to do the pins. That's fine. But they'll tell a story that say, oh, the pins aren't available or the pins aren't here. We don't have pins, things like that. And of course, us being cast members and us knowing where the pin boards are in most cases, it's kind of like we're not going to argue with it. We're just going to move on to the next. And they just happened to be as soon as we turned around and left and came back, that cast member was gone, and then there was a pin board that magically appeared. But then we fast forward to probably our greatest experience with a cast member of the day. We went to Caribbean Beach. And of course, if you know Caribbean Beach, we take the Skyline to Caribbean Beach. That's already a walk, a little bit of a walk just to get to the main building. No big deal. It's a beautiful day, beautiful day. We go to the Calypso Trading Post, which is the gift shop located in the main building. And let me just say, it was a fantastic experience from the moment we spoke to the cast member. We stood in line, we waited, and we asked the cast member who had a blue ID, or I should say blue name tag. If you don't know a blue name tag for cast members, that is, I believe, the Legacy Award. That is a very prestigious award as far as cast members go. You actually have to be voted on by your peers in order to get this particular name tag. It's something that I wish I could have been in the company long enough to do. It's one of my biggest things. That I mean, I'm not going to say I regret. I don't regret much of anything, if anything at all. But I really wish that I could have really been with the company long term and be able to accomplish that blue name tag. As trivial as that is, but that, like I said, that's how adamant that me and my wife were to being cast members. With that being said, the cast member, now his name was Mario. I'm under the interpretation that he was some sort of lead or manager of the gift shop. We had a great interaction with him. We talked about it. He informed us about a few changes that is going around with pin trading, which I'll get into maybe either in this video or another video. I don't want to really do too long of a nighttime live stream, as technically it's even past my bedtime. I'm usually, as my mom would say, I'm on my second dream by now. We had a great interaction with this cast member named Mario. He proceeded to tell us some changes that were being done as far as trivia, some of the things that pin trading has now had to change because, well, let's just say we can't have nice things, unfortunately. And so we had, like I said, we had this great interaction. We had a great interaction with this cast member, and he proceeded to kind of, he said, "Hey, I got something for you." And he goes to the back. We've talked to another cast member who is basically reiterating our feelings towards this cat to the Mario guy, that he's great to work with. He was awesome. Excuse me. He comes Mario comes back with a bag because if you don't know, last year there was I believe it was the kids. It was like a special summer for kids, and I believe they're bringing it back this year again. And last year there was a thing where when people checked in, they typically got a special pin, or kids usually got a special pin. Unfortunately, we missed out on the pin last year, but he actually was gracious enough to gift us a pin. One, I shouldn't say gifted, because we answered his trivia question right. He came back with a pin from last year's big kids summer event that they were having. So again, I felt as if that was very special, basically. So it goes back to how adamant we are about cast members and how we feel about cast members. Like again, like we said, there's some cast members, they love their job. There's some cast members, it's a paycheck to them, and now it's getting to the point where I can tell those cast members that really just don't want to be cast members sometimes. And I feel as if that's unfortunately the direction that the Walt Disney World Company in some instances are going. It's not the same at Disneyland. We've gone to Disneyland. We've had great experiences with those cast members. I think it's more because it's such a localized park. Lots of people who work at Disneyland live in the area, so they take pride in what they do. I think that the Walt Disney World part of it here in Florida, it's steering away from that. I would say for the first I would say for the first 2.5, 3 decades or so, that's what Walt Disney World was. But now that they focus so much on just bringing in people from wherever, not to discredit anything from the college programs or things like that, but I think that so many people come to Florida to work for Disney, but they don't have the attitude to work for Disney. My wife, she adapted very well. She came to Florida. She wanted to work for Disney. That's what she wanted to do, and she fits the mold. But I think a lot of people, they come down here because they think they want to be Floridians. They think they want to work for Disney, and then they get here, leaves a sour taste in their mouth. Then they don't want to do it anymore. So it is what it is as far as that. So before I get any more deeper with this podcast, go ahead and like this video, like this podcast, subscribe to the channel if you have not. This is going to be a new stretch of videos or podcasts that I'm going to be doing at least for the evening time, especially for this week, because as we noted in the first live stream podcast that we did, we are actually blocked from the parks due to the Easter holiday. I believe that we're going to be unblocked starting on Monday. So hopefully we'll be back to the theme parks again Monday, Tuesday. We're hoping Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's the schedule we want to get to. I still will be doing this nighttime chat throughout. So that's something I'm not really going to try to deviate from. I'm going to try to at least give that content a chance. But I do want to get back into live streaming in the park. But what I do want to say is, in the future, I don't think I'm going to be doing too much of the walkarounds and the ride POVs when we do our live streams. One thing is because, again, it is difficult to navigate with me. I'm blind. My wife is trying to navigate through the parks with me. Sometimes I don't go into the places that she's going into because I'm holding the camera primarily, and it's kind of just rude for me to just hold the camera in just random spots or in people's faces without knowing where I'm at. So as far as the future videos that we're going to be doing, I do want to make sure that everyone knows that it's probably going to be like a focal point, like what we've been doing with Main Street USA, having just a place that I set up the camera, set it up on a trash can, get a nice view, and then that's where we'll be parking for that live stream. I figure there's a lot of people that's in the park streaming. They're giving you the POVs. You can only do so many rides the same way, so many shows the same way. But I think that a lot of people who are ninja watching or people who are watching from their work computers or laptops, maybe all they really want is that view of Main Street USA, that view of Spaceship Earth, and maybe some chitter chatter in the background, which I obviously can give you at the end of the day. As you can tell, if you can't hear in the background, I have some audio that's playing from the Blue Bayou. It's actually technically, I guess you could say, it's from the background music of Pirates of the Caribbean, the restaurant portion. So just a little something I like to have playing in the background is definitely ambiance noises and whatnot like that. That's another thing that we actually like doing. That's why I like to just point the camera anywhere on Main Street USA or any of the parks really, just to get that ambiance feel and whatnot like that. So like I said, future live streams probably won't be as much walking and touring around the theme parks. We'll probably just pick one focal spot and just let people get that view for the day. Kind of also in playing in part of how we'll see people who do live shots of Port Canaveral and things like that. You know, it's just scenery for the most part. Like I said, it's just easier to do it that way, just to pick a spot, park in it, be done with it, make a video. But yeah, back to the other part of this podcast. So, having something to say, I really just feel as if people need to be, they need to be prepared to be a cast member if you're going to be a cast member. It's imperative because I think we've seen so many people that they signed up to be cast members and it doesn't pan out the way they wanted to pan out. And the biggest shocker I think that we've had is the amount of people that we hear that like they don't like being a cast member because again it's too hot. It's Florida. It's gonna get hot. I mean, Florida's gonna be hot at least 9, maybe even 10 months out of the year. If you can't deal with the heat, I wouldn't get a job at a theme park. Another big thing that I'll never understand: lots of people who work for the Walt Disney World Company don't even care for people or kids. I think that's also kind of difficult to navigate for the most part. So, I mean, for whatever reason, there's just a whole cast of characters of people that have signed up for the Walt Disney World Company, and you could tell it's been a revolving door because, especially for me now, some instances you never see the same faces twice. Um, I took pride in the fact of that I went to work in certain areas for very long periods of time. Unfortunately, didn't plan out that well for me. But it's very hard now to find that dedicated person that's been with the company for more than 5 years now. You see the 10 years, you see the 15 years, but it's like there's so many people that just aren't there as long as they used to be. It's a little disheartening because again, like I said, you could tell by the vibes of some people. You could tell no matter where you are, whether it be in a merchandise, food and beverage, anywhere it is, you could just tell that the aura isn't the same as it was back in the day. So, but I will never ever tell people to shy away from being a Walt Disney World cast member. If you absolutely adore it, if you absolutely have always wanted to do it, go for it, try it out. But just know you got to take it in stride, and you can't take things personal. Um, cast members cast members are very clicky, and guests in the park can be very abusive, verbal and even physical, unfortunately. So, again, take all that in consideration if you are trying to be a cast member in the future or at any given point in time at all. Now, To add to that, like I said, I want to add more to this than just making it about Disney in most cases. But to add on to that, the biggest one is this: when you're moving to Florida, make sure that you're moving to Florida to be a Floridian. I think the problem is that especially over the last since the pandemic, really, but realistically, over the last I would say 7, 8, 9 years, the amount of people that have moved to Florida that still want to be where they're from. It's like if you move to Florida, you want to be a Floridian. That's what you are. Don't come from New York and you want to bring New York to Florida. Don't come from Chicago or any other places and try to bring that area to Florida. It just doesn't translate. The reason I want to bring that up is simply to say this: there has been an abundance of people that are, how do I say, there is, let's say this, there is an abundance of people that are finding out that Florida just doesn't play around. The biggest one is, of course, the increased amount of alligator attacks that we've had in very common areas here in Florida. Keep in mind when you come to Florida, every body of water could and probably does have an alligator in it. Just because you don't see one doesn't mean that it's not there. And I think that there's been so many encounters with gators over the last decade, so many more encounters with gators, because people are not understanding that water is dangerous. That water is a breeding ground for a dinosaur, basically. And like I said, every waterway has the potential of having an alligator in it. I know there's some national parks that you can get away with that, but any other just regular body of water is probably going to have an alligator in it. The reason I bring this up is because there was an incident that happened, I believe, about a year ago. Um, a couple was out kayaking. It was shallow water, so obviously they didn't see any danger in that because it was kind of shallow water. But unfortunately, what they didn't see was an alligator that was nestled in the water underneath the Merc. That kayak went over the gator. The gator panicked. The gator slashed. Unfortunately, it took the life of the young lady that was on the kayak. And the only thing that can really be done and said is just you got to be careful when you do those things. Again, these are things that people can do up north, Midwest, out where it's fine to do that stuff. But around here, it's like there's a guy on social media now. He's getting and pretty big on it. He's basically been calling Florida Jumanji because literally we got everything. We've got gators, we've got crocodiles, we've got coyotes, obviously. We've got, of course, we've got foxes, we've got bears, we've got bobcats, we've got cougars, and apparently, as you go a little bit farther north towards the Ocala area, just north of Orlando, not too far, um, we got monkeys, apparently. We've got some monkeys that have been jumping in and out of the water, which is also interesting because typically it's been said that monkeys don't like water. But yeah, these apparently we've got a large number of monkeys and or apes that have actually been here for quite a few years now. Apparently, how people have illegal pets. Well, some of these pets were released into the wild, and they just kind of adapted to Florida. And of course, when you go farther south, you have the iguanas, you've got more alligators. Now we have pythons. I mean, Florida literally just has danger all around the place. But that's the thing that I think that most people just don't take in consideration when they're coming from their areas that they're coming from. So, like I said, if you're going to come down to Florida, if you're going to be a Floridian, be a Floridian. Leave your city, leave your state, leave your whatever it is you did. It's a brand new culture when you move down to Florida. Also, here's the other thing too. Now, this is going to be a sore subject that I could definitely divulge into at a later time, but it's definitely going to come down to this. Housing in Florida is insane. There are certain areas that are worth the price tag. There are certain areas that have no business being as high as they are. And then don't fall into the trick of buying something because the price tag says so. And also, if you're selling, don't fall for because other people have this house listed for this price, you need to list it for this price. Because what we've been seeing, me and my wife especially, is houses that sit on the market for at least 2 years, but they take it on and off the market. So they, I don't want to say manipulating it, but they're basically making it seem as if, oh, the house market is great because there's not a house on there. But yet you've put your house on the market, you've put this same house on the market 4 or 5 times and you keep playing around with the prices. So it's kind of like all over the place with the conversation, but that's kind of like the big one is if you're going to move to Florida, be aware that not every house is worth what they say it is. Don't come to Florida with your expectations that you're going to bring whatever you used to do down here, and Florida has to adapt to that. That's probably one of the biggest reasons why we have so many issues right now in Florida over the past 5 or 6 years, between traffic, between just everything. We have just we have an abundance of people that have come in, and it's clashing with Florida. And if there's one thing that also can be said that's very, very true, is that excuse me, it wasn't until a little bit later that I found out that there was actually there's a set of years that people have that they live in Florida, and it's I considered it a 257. It's actually a 357. Put that in years: 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and it breaks it down to where someone who moves to Florida, if they're by the time they get to the third year, they've either loved it here or they hate it here. And typically, they might if they hate it here, they're trying to get out of here within those 3 years. If you've gone to the 5 year rule, 5 years is basically where they've determined that they really want to stay here, but they still travel back and forth from where they're from. But also the 5 year is where they've now gotten to the point where they're worked since the third year they've been working to get out. Fifth year, they're definitely getting out. The seventh year is the tricky part. The seventh year is basically you're stuck. You either have been here long enough for 7 years that you don't want to go anywhere else. Your visitations to other places are very limited. You're here. You're 7 years. You're committed to Florida. There's nowhere else you're going to go. However, if you're here for 7 years and you've been trying to get out for 7 years, you're now probably looking at it as, I'm never going to get out of here, basically. Unfortunately, that's just how it is for the most part. Like I said, we've seen several people that have been here in that time frame: 3 years, 5 years, they're gone. 7 years, they're either here and they're miserable and they can't wait to get out, but they can't leave or they don't leave or whatever the case might be. So and it kind of all ties into being a cast member as well, because, like I said, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who move to Disney, who move here to work for Disney. They don't enjoy their experience, or that experience doesn't work out for some odd reason, and then it leaves a sour taste in their mouth for the state of Florida, and for everything that they do. And then basically, it's a struggle to get out. But then it's also a struggle sometimes because at the end of the day, some people, and I know plenty of people that this has happened to, they got so fed up with Florida they were ready to go. Then they leave. And then about 3, 4 years, they loved it, they left. Then about 3, 4 years, they regret leaving and they want to come back. But then it's kind of like you can't come back now because everything is just super expensive. It's just out of control and it just doesn't make any sense. It's more of a struggle to get placed in Florida before it was easy. Before you can move to Florida with, and get a job paying $40,000 a year, you're going to get something. Now it's almost as if you got to make 85,000 a year just to be at the bare minimum. So that's another reason why I would say it's very difficult. It's very difficult to be a cast member because now the reward isn't worth the magic, so to speak. Like I said, me and my wife would love to rue the day where we could re-enter back into Walt Disney World property and be cast members. But it just seems like the company itself has even taken a turn for the worse. Every time there's a shift in management, every time there's a shift in something, you lose a little bit more of that magic that made this place so special. Case in point, if anybody didn't know, like I said, I was let go from the company last Tuesday. It's been a struggle to get placed somewhere. I've actually been back and forth with the Walt Disney World Company since 2019. I did cover that in Day One's podcast. that, like I said, will never see the light of day. But yeah, it was kind of like, it's been a struggle because I know what I can do. I know that I can work better than some people that I've even been around in the Walt Disney World Company recently, but they just won't give me the chance. And I think it's just a lot because the people at the top, they make all these rules, all these regulations, that does make it difficult to follow. So, all right. So, um, back into some of the things that I would like to just say as well. Like I said, my experience being a cast member, I'll never forget it. I think it would take too long of a conversation to really digress into what being a cast member meant to me. Like I said, my initial love for Disney was at a very young age. I reached those teenage years where I didn't want to do it as much. I was more turning into Universal Studios, wanted to be more adventurous. But then, like I said, there was one decisive day where I saw my dad, who's a very serious guy, and he had a silly side that came out on this trip to Disney. He was riding Dumbo with my little brother. He did something he's never done before. He made a silly sound, made a silly face. Again, it was like I was watching this guy's inner child come out, and it was kind of like at that point I knew I wanted to be here. Fast forward 2001, unfortunately, my father passed away. To me, I think he wanted to achieve the dream of moving to Florida one day. As I had to clear out his work locker and things like that, I found a lot of information he had collected on different places to live in Florida and whatnot like that. And so I really was determined to get to Florida to fulfill, I guess, what my dad didn't get to do. I fortunately was able to do that in 2008. Uh, then I was able to get the job with the Walt Disney World Company in 2013. I will definitely say it was an emotional, it was an emotional time frame because these are milestones of my life that I do want to accomplish in honor of my dad, and unfortunately he was not around to do that. But I still felt good about it. That's why it's kind of like I look at some people and their love for Disney, everyone's got a different love. Everyone's got a different appeal. But sometimes I feel as if there's a difference between someone who's come here as a kid because it's like that's their childhood vacation. That's what they symbolize it with. Um, but fortunately for me, I put it in a different realm. Excuse me, because it was very important for me to be here. So Reed, good evening. Yes, I was, I had to take a pause a little bit earlier in the video before you came in, because yes, some of those comments I was kind of unsure about, and then I just saw one of the comments. I appreciate, once again, appreciate the moderators that do come in and clean up what I obviously can't get to. It really just makes me wonder about people on YouTube nowadays. It's very interesting, um, but yeah, I was just referring to the fact of me being a cast member. It meant a lot to us. It still means a lot to us. I would love to have that time back to kind of take back what I missed out on. So many missed opportunities being a cast member. And I'm not going to try to be on here too long. I kind of want to do this thing where it's like I'm going to be streaming about 9:15 to about 10 o'clock, just to keep something going. I did state earlier that of course, if there's anybody that's a wrestling fan, anybody that tunes into this at a later date, I do want to get as we get closer and closer to the big event, WrestleMania, which is Wrestling Super Bowl. If you didn't know, that actually takes place, I believe, 2 weeks to April 18th and 19th, I think it is. It's a Saturday and a Sunday. So very excited for that. If you're a wrestling fans, tune into that. I was gonna kind of do that today, but I figure I'll keep it I'll keep it closer to the actual date so that we're not dragging on all this wrestling talking mumbo jumbo later on. But I will say this. I will say this as far as being a cast member. Now, if we ever get to the point where there's a lot of people that want to come in and chime in and ask questions, again, now that I've always said this, once Disney let me go, I did not want anything to be held back. I just wanted to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say I'm not going to release secrets. I'm not going to be too controversial, but I think that along the lines of what I can share, I will share. Um, and of course, if I can't share certain things, then I definitely won't share that. But if anybody wanted to know what it was like to be a cast member, as far as backstage, everything backstage. If you've ever seen a special or a video or anything about what it's like being backstage at Disney, it's like it's like you don't even peel back anything in reality of what it's like to be in the tunnel. The tunnel system in the Magic Kingdom, which is what they call the Utilidors, is an amazing structure. And when you hear the story behind it, apparently, if you did not know, the Magic Kingdom, when they started construction for the Magic Kingdom, they dug up all this dirt. That dirt is what is now what has been made from the Seven Seas Lagoon, which of course is where the ferry boats that take you to the Magic Kingdom. What they did was they built the tunnel system first, and then the dirt from the Seven Seas Lagoon was piled on top of the tunnel system. The reason they did that is basically because then the Magic Kingdom itself was built on top of the dirt. So, if you did not know, the Magic Kingdom, as far as everything that most of the stuff that you see, as far as Main Street USA, all the way up to the castle, that is actually the second floor, so to speak, of the Magic Kingdom. Basically, not every part of the Magic Kingdom has a tunnel underneath, but there is huge chunks of space that you won't even realize you're actually stepping. There's actually people who are working underneath you, walking underneath you, driving small vehicles, everything. It's a little working city underneath. And I feel, and of course, you don't even realize how special that is until, like I said, when you get to be a cast member. Once you're in there, they show you how it all works, and then you're just amazed because now, like even to this very day, I'm blind, but I can still visualize that tunnel. I can visualize where parts of the tunnel lead to. If you're ever on stage, it's like I could say, "Oh, yeah, this stairway goes right down this area." It's like I know it like the back of my hand almost, which is a very interesting accomplishment considering the fact that the tunnel system can be very confusing. And if you didn't know, the tunnel system was actually incorporated because if there's one thing that Walt Disney did not like with Disneyland, it was the fact that cast members would walk to their locations um, basically, as they say, on stage. So, for instance, there would be a cast member who was in Frontierland, but of course, if he gets off work, he has to walk through the park to get to his vehicle or his backstage area. Well, then what happens is the story goes is that one day Walt Disney saw a cast member in a Frontierland costume walking through Tomorrowland, and that destroys the theming, so to speak. And I completely agree with that 100%. Um, so in response to that, they did not want to do that with their next park, which was, of course, 1971, or I should say the late 60s, opening up in 1971, Walt Disney World here in the Magic Kingdom. An intricate tunnel system design so that cast members would not have to cross over to various areas. Now, you'll still see occasionally, if someone, you'll see someone, uh, Pirates of the Caribbean might have to walk through the Jungle Cruise area, but it's still Adventureland. But you're not going to see Pirates of the Caribbean characters walking through the Haunted Mansion, so to speak. Excuse me. So, but that's some of the things that we've been noticing as we continue to go to the parks every day or the park area, even this week. Yes, even though we've been blocked out, we have still been to at least the resorts. I believe, like I said, today we went to Pop Century Art of Animation and Caribbean Beach. We had some great experiences with pin trading, meeting some great cast members, and then meeting some not so great cast members. But I will definitely say kudos to the cast members at Caribbean Beach. They were, as far as we encountered with them, they were all great above and beyond. Especially, like I said, Mario, who I want to say was either some sort of a lead supervisor or manager for the Calypso Trading Post over there at Caribbean Beach. So um, overall, great experiences. I would say probably about two or three cast members. Like I said, I don't know what they're going through. Don't know what's going on in their personal life. Um, they may just have a bad day, but hey, like I said, I've had bad days at Disney, and I never tried to take it out on people that have paid good money to be here on Disney property. Now, let me go ahead and address this. This is actually what I wanted to say yesterday during the fiasco of yesterday's live stream when I actually, hopefully the camera isn't on today. Hopefully you guys are just seeing the thumbnail that we put out, which is, like I said, is one of the things I wanted to kind of make sure that everyone knows that when you see podcast in the title, this is specifically what today's live stream is going to be, or this particular live stream. It's just going to be an audio for people who just like to have late night chats, late night conversations. Whether you're here, whether you're not, doesn't matter. I'm getting this stuff off my chest. Yesterday, even though I know it was April Fool's Day, there were some. There was actually a couple of, I guess you could say, YouTube videos that I listened to that almost seemed like an April Fool's joke until I realized that people were actually voicing what they wanted to see in Walt Disney World's parks, which is fine. I love that creativity. I wish that Disney had that same creativity, or at least I wish that Disney and Universal Studios would express that opportunity, that express that excitement. But so here's the thing: the Skyliner, the Disney Skyliner here in Florida, probably one of the greatest additions to Walt Disney World as a whole, because it allowed for more transportation options, and it was a great transportation option, and it could have been added to a better location. Because if there's one thing that can always be said, it always seemed as if Disney catered to the moderates and Disney catered to the deluxe resorts when it comes to amenities and things like that. Adding the Skyliner to Pop Century and Art of Animation. Now, even though they're considered value resorts, Art of Animation is a little bit pricey, but they're still considered a value resort. That was a much needed um, addition. Excuse me. That was a much needed addition to that particular resort, to give that extra little bit of magic in a sense with a different version of transportation. Even though it did lead to buses being taken away from Hollywood Studios and Epcot, because of course the Skyline was available, but it's still just a nice alternative. And everyone's been clamoring to see if they're going to be adding another monorail extension to Disney World. And I would personally love to see that. I would love to personally see them add a monorail station that services Animal Kingdom to Animal Kingdom Lodge, and maybe even Coronado, something to that effect. Adding an Animal Kingdom Skyliner station, and then adding another main hub to where you could catch it for Animal Kingdom Lodge, you could catch it to Coronado, you could catch it even from or even connecting it to Caribbean Beach. Great addition, nonetheless. The other thing I would love to see them do is adding the Skyliner to some form of the Magic Kingdom. Not necessarily to and from a resort. I think that um, I don't think that the resorts need any other transportation in the Magic Kingdom.